Hey there, Chipmunks! Welcome to the AMP Cycling Ride Review Series. I'm your host, Angry Chipmunk.
And I'm your co-host, Big Chipmunk.
Today, we'll be reviewing one of our regular gravel rides, the Colo River South Loop. On this particular ride, I was riding a gravel bike.
And I was riding a 29er mountain bike. So we'll be comparing how the ride stacks up for each type of bike. This ride is about 55 k's long with about 750 to 800 meters of elevation gain, and there are two main climbs, both of which come before the halfway point.
We did this route in a counterclockwise direction, but you can actually do it either way. It's a mixed terrain route with about a 50-50 split between gravel road and paved road.
The whole thing is on public roads, so you are likely to encounter cars in all sections. By the way, you'll also need the car to get here as there's no public transport.
Well, let's get right into it.
We start our route at Colo River Park, which is just off Putty Road. It's about 25 k's north of Windsor. We head west on Upper Colo Road, turning off at Comleroy Road, where the first real gravel section starts. We ride it south, turning left onto Blacksland Bridge Road, which is paved. Ride east along here for quite a while until turning left onto Putty Road for a short stint. You cross over Putty Road for another gravel section, heading east on Packer Road before returning to the tarmac of West Portland Road. From there, it's back to gravel on the lower Colo Road back to the park.
You can use the first section of road to warm up as it's pretty mellow. The first climb comes at around the 15-kilometer mark at Comleroy Road. It's 1.75 kilometers long and has 180 meters of elevation gain. It averages a massive 10.3% and peaks at 15% around the halfway point. The climb starts almost immediately as you turn onto Comleroy Road. The start is one of the toughest parts of this climb, with gradients in the 11 to 13% range for a few hundred meters. You will see sections like this repeatedly on this climb. It is undoubtedly the toughest part of the entire route. There are several switchbacks which do add quite a bit of difficulty due to the loose nature of gravel. I would suggest going up it without stopping, as it's quite difficult to get traction going again, but if you must stop, there are two flattish sections a bit before the halfway point off to the left.
The best Strava segment to follow for this climb is Comleroy Church Climb. Strava listed as a Cat 3, but due to being gravel, I'd say it's a bit more like a Cat 2.
I like to go out wide and cut back for the tight corners, as it does provide a bit of an easier line, but also helps to keep the traction. The gravel bike's narrower and less chunky tires can be rather difficult on these steep sections, with frequent loss of traction if you don't keep an even and consistent pedaling. I regularly slip my back tire simply trying to muscle up the steep bits.
I agree that this climb is tough. I've ridden it a few times on a gravel bike, and it was a rather different thing on the mountain bike. I was expecting the extra weight of the bike to be a struggle, but the lower gearing, bigger tyres and squishy back end made for good traction, which meant you could just settle into a rhythm and pedal. While stopping partway up makes it pretty tough to get going again, there's some great views to be had over the river.
You follow along the top of the ridge for about 2 kilometers before hitting the descent. It's quite a flat section, which is nice for recovering some energy and grabbing a quick bite to eat and drink.
Or you could just stop for a rest.
You'll need to be 100% focused for the descent, so it's essential to refuel here before you get to it.
Or you could just stop for a rest. The descent's actually very quick. The gradients peak at about minus 11%, which is pretty crazy on the dirt. The lead up to the corners can be very corrugated, so you really need to watch carefully. Sometimes the corners have got big ruts or holes on the inside, so don't hug the gutter. After a large right-hand switchback, you've got a few rather open corners before getting to the Weenie Creek water crossing. The climb back out of the water is very short, but you want to prepare your gearing early, as was probably in the little cog for the descent. The water's not very deep most of the time, but half cranks across the water will help keep your shoes drier. This is a good place to stop for a quick bite, to eat or a rest, and there are also toilets here.
On the gravel bike, descent can be really quite scary and challenging. The shadows can make the corrugations very difficult to see. And once you've done it a few times, it's a bit easier to remember the corners and you can go quite a bit faster. I always like to brake early for the corners to avoid grabbing too much brake while being bounced around in the corrugations, and you will be bounced around. This descent requires a very good bike handling skills. You need to have a lot of confidence in your braking skills, your tire grip, your brake pads and rotors, and your arm and leg strength. It's not uncommon to get a fair amount of arm and leg pump by the time you reach the bottom. And always keep your eyes forward to look for the best and smoothest line, as the gravel bike can easily slip out if you're not careful. I ride clips, but if you ride flats, you'll also want to make sure that your shoe and pedal combo is solid.
Whee! Actually, this was the first time I ever did this descent on a mountain bike, and it was fun and fast. The corrugations are still real, but you don't feel like you need to plan each corner, and you can mostly just send it. If you've ridden rides like the Oaks, this descent is pretty similar to those.
From here, you're immediately onto the second climb. It's about 2 kilometers long and has about 160 meters of elevation gain and averages 7.5%. You will see peaks of up to 14% though. This climb starts a bit easier than the first, with the middle bit being the more difficult. There are again several switchbacks to keep things interesting. The last few hundred meters mellow significantly, which helps.
We're using the Chipmunk Thundernut Edition Wahoo Element Bolt, and it has the correct climb profile, but the timing of when it starts is a bit delayed. This is something to watch for if you're using the same computer in the route that we use. But it's not a big deal, as just when you think you're headed for another stretch of about 12%, you realise you've already done it and now you've hit the mellow section towards the top. The best Strava segment for this is the Comleroy Road Climb. Strava also lists this as a Cat 3, and I would tend to agree with this one as it's easier than the first.
On this section, I have a tendency to weave across the road to help lessen the steepness. It's really only necessary if you're a bit tired, but the leg and arm pump from the descent is usually taking its toll by this point. This is again a climb I wouldn't stop on, as getting traction again is tough. Pacing it similarly to the first climb will work well.
This climb isn't as challenging as the first one from a technical perspective in my opinion, but it's long and you're probably already tired. It's still pretty significant, but also has a nice view. However, there's no river views here. The mountain bike doesn't offer a great advantage on this climb, as it's not as steep or slippery as the first one.
You ride along for another approximately 2 kilometers before the road becomes paved, and it remains paved until you cross Putty Road. Altogether, it's about 15 kilometers of well-earned reprieve on top of the ridge. This is a great section to grab another bite to eat and try and recover some feeling back in your arms and legs. It's mostly flat, with a few minor hills that won't exceed 6%.
On the mountain bike, the first section of this paved road is really nice as there's a small descent, but the section on Blaxlands Ridge Road is a bit of a punish. I found it hard to pace along at a decent speed, and the slow rolling and extra weight of the bike was really unwelcome after a few kilometers. This is where it really feels like the mountain bike is a struggle. I often find this section a little bit tiring and boring anyway, but the mountain bike made both of these points abundantly clear.
Gravel bike go brrrr. This section is a very welcome on the gravel bike after the rough dirt sections. Here, the narrow, less knobbly tires are a definite advantage. It's easy to push along at 20 to 30 kilometers an hour on the flat sections and faster down the hills. It's not difficult at all.
Then there's a short pinch climb up Putty Road where you're basically in the shoulder next to the traffic going about 100 k's an hour. Watch out for both the cars and the excessive amounts of debris that find their way into the shoulder. There's a section to pull over at the crest of the hill, and here you can either continue along Putty Road, this is fast and fun, or head back to the gravel on Packer Road. If you're particularly tired or short on time, the Putty Road shortcut is a great choice and the fastest way back to the park.
Packer Road is affectionately known as Trash Road, as there is frequently dumped rubbish along here. It's only about 3 kilometers long, but this section is always very badly corrugated. And despite the road being quite wide, it frequently feels like there is no spot where it's smooth. It's mostly flat along here. At West Portland Road, it once again is paved, which is the greatest thing since peanut butter after the mess that is Trash Road.
Even on the mountain bike, Trash Road is rough. The corrugations are often hard to see, and if you can see them, there isn't a smooth section across the whole road. The mountain bike does make it more bearable, but it's still rough, and I'd avoid it if there was another way around. The road section on West Portland Road feels like butter and makes you wish you had a road bike, but it is so nice after Trash Road.
I actually just hate this section. The corrugations are so bad, you can literally feel your brain jiggling around in your skull. Your eyeballs are completely unable to focus on anything because they're spinning like a cartoon. Your arms hurt, your hands hurt, your feet hurt, and even your cat at home hurts. Without a doubt, it's the worst section of this ride. Weaving across the road trying to find the smooth bit is tricky. You can easily lose traction and end up slipping in and out of the grooves. And because it's so hard to find the smooth spots and focus on the ground, it feels like it's about 4 times longer than it actually is. We didn't even realize it was so short until looking up the data for this review. Going slower can help a bit, but not really that much. It's mostly flat here, so you do just need to pedal through all the ruts.
Who knew that Trash Road was only 3 k's long? It feels so long. So after turning left onto Lower Colo Road, there is one final descent. It can be a bit rough though, so be mindful and watch the corners. At the bottom of the hill, you end up alongside the river and you just follow it back to the start point. The road is really only a single lane and the corners can be a little blind, so keep your eyes open for traffic, chipfolk. The surface is mostly good dirt road with some unexpected elevation change. You'll be thinking that climbing is over, right? Expect some pinches of up to about 10%, but they're only short.
There's nothing particularly noteworthy about this section of the ride. It's not too bad either way. The descent is much easier here than the first, and even though some of the corners are a bit tight, the gradients are more mellow, so you can go a bit faster. The steep uphill sections are not long enough or steep enough that you lose traction or need to worry about pacing. The surface is generally in decent condition though, which makes it quite pleasant.
I like this part. The descent is welcome and fun without being too challenging. The whole section feels like you're coming home after a long ride. Sometimes it feels like the bridge that you park under is just around the next corner, but often it isn't. Maybe it's the next corner. Anyway, the corners and the surface of the descent is pretty smooth enough that on the mountain bike you don't need to be particular with your lines or your braking points. This section is perfectly suitable for a mountain bike.
The view on this ride is great. It's classic Aussie bushland. The view back down the road from the top of the climbs is pretty epic, and it's well worth your time to stop and look around. There's quite a lot of scenery changes along this route as well, with several fields, big rock cliffs, waterways, highway, and just straight up bush.
If you like riding out of the city and being away from the hustle and bustle, this is a great location. There's a small launching jetty at the park where you can sit and soak your very tired peats after the ride as well. It's a perfect spot to also have your lunch and just chill out a bit before heading home. It can be a little bit noisy with the road overhead though, but not bad enough to make you want to leave immediately.
The great thing about this park is that it also offers toilets, which is perfect if you've had to travel more than 20 minutes to get here. There's another toilet stop at Winnie Creek just before the second climb. For the sit down to pee chipmunks, it's beneficial to wear shorts instead of bibs, because it also means that you can pop a squat on the side of the road if you need to. And as we know, nature breaks are important, chipfolk.
Weenie Creek is also a great place to stop and have a short break or regroup before launching into the second climb. There's nowhere along this route to get water and you'll need to bring it all with you. If you're doing the ride in summer, a hydration pack with a minimum of 2 litres is a must. It can get very hot and coupled with the tough climbs you can easily go through a lot of water and the risk of dehydrating is real. We also take an electrolyte water. It's not only useful for preventing dehydration, but the sweet taste is a welcome change from the water. And if you've run out of water once you've hit Putty Road, you should probably consider just going straight back to the park.
Fueling during gravel rides can sometimes be a challenge with the rougher surfaces, so you'll want to take advantage of every stop and flatter section to eat a bar and drink some water. Pre-fueling with protein on this one will help a bit, but there's usually such a long time between when you've eaten to when you actually get started on the ride that the protein won't last very long. Aim for about 15 grams or so every time you eat something. Bring plenty of fast-acting carbs on this ride in case you need them. I like to have a pouch of fruit puree as a fast and easy source of carbs. It's also very easy to eat and quickly absorbed. Fruit in general doesn't sit very heavy in my stomach, so it's a good choice for helping to prevent cramping. With a hydration pack, you have plenty of room to carry a banana or apple, so just do it. Bars that you are familiar with are a good choice for your easily accessed frame bag.
We'd like to follow this ride up with a protein drink to help with muscle recovery. A magnesium supplement is also recommended as your legs will definitely feel this one. We suggest packing your own lunch so that not only do you have it to eat straight away, but you can be sure to pack something that's pretty healthy with a good mix of carbs
And nuts.
and protein
And nuts.
and fat.
And nuts.
There's also not really a lot of choice nearby anyway, and this ensures you won't hangry stop for some junk food on the way home.
Overall, this is a great ride that's a lot of fun and offers some good climbing challenges. It's a good mix of paved and gravel. and I would definitely be recommending this one if you're close. If you're an experienced road rider who likes to climb, this can be a good first gravel ride. The descents can be tricky if you don't have any dirt background though, and if you're not very experienced with climbs, these will be pretty challenging, so I would suggest you start with something easier first.
Can take anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 hours to complete, and even longer if the weather is bad, so be sure to plan your day around it. Including travel, you can be looking at a half day for this ride. The weather can also play a big role in how you approach this ride, but it can still be ridden in the rain and the wet. In the summer and heat, you'll need to pack accordingly with plenty of water and sunscreen. Colo River has flooded in the past, so if there's been a significant amount of rainfall lately, check the conditions before you set out. If you do come for a ride, look up under the bridge at the park and you'll see some sticks caught in the structure from previous flooding.
For this route, I'll be giving it a 4 out of 5. The gravel sections are great and challenging, but the riding on the paved road with the high speed limits can be a bit nerve-wracking and not that fun. The cars are generally pretty polite on the dirt sections though. For the climbs, I'd be giving a 4 out of 5 for the first and 3.5 out of 5 for the second. The high gradients and slippery surfaces can make both a challenge, but the first is definitely more difficult. For the view, I would give this one a 4 out of 5. The scenery is pretty classic and very nice. There's some great views on top of the hills with nice changes from fields and rock cliffs along the way. There are plenty of animals to look out for too. And overall, I would give this one a 4.5 out of 5. I enjoy this ride quite a bit. It's got a lot going on, and there's always some challenges along the way, whether it's with the climbs, the weather, the surface, or just in general.
So for me, on the mountain bike, I would give this route a 3 out of 5. It is actually a little bit tough, but for the wrong reasons. The flat open sections are better suited to a gravel bike, and the mountain bike does feel like a bit of a slog. The descents are the best bit, but they only make a small section of this route. For the climbs, I give it a 4 out of 5, and they are still fairly significant. Even with the lower gearings and the high traction, they are steep and long enough, they're going to make you work for it regardless of your bike choice. For the views, I give it a 4 out of 5. I really like the mix of bush and open fields on this ride. The views from the first climb in particular are pretty great. You can see the river in the distance, and you can also see the road that you were just on, like way down below you. It's pretty cool. And that also doesn't change based on your bike choice. Overall, on the mountain bike, I give this a 3 out of 5. It is a great route, but again, the mountain bike is what makes it a lot of hard work. It's harder than I felt like it should have been, and I missed the ease of the gravel bike on the flatter, longer sections, even though the descents were heaps of fun.
Well, that's it for this review, so thanks for watching, chipmunks.
Well, I hope your chooks turn into emus and kick your dunny doors down.
Let us know what you think of this ride once you've completed it, or if you want to know more about it or have any questions, just leave us a comment.
There is a link to the route in the description.
We'll see you next week for another review. Until then, enjoy the rest of this video, and as always,
Mountain bike on!